I stood on the front steps of the house that was once my home, the air heavy with the late spring warmth of Austin. The sun had barely set, casting long shadows across the familiar landscape. I had just returned from the funeral of Victoria, a woman who had become my only solace in the final years of her life. The suitcase in my hand felt heavier than it should, burdened with the weight of my uncertain future. As I approached the door, it swung open to reveal Ilara, her eyes cold and unyielding. "Didn't expect you back so soon," she said, her voice flat and devoid of warmth. There was no hug, no comforting words, just a stark reminder that I was no longer welcome here. Inside, the living room looked rearranged, as if someone had tried to erase any trace of my existence. Ilara stood with her arms crossed, her irritation barely concealed. "So what's your plan now?" she asked, her tone dismissive. Before I could respond, a familiar voice echoed from the hallway. "Wait, so you're unemployed now, right?" Lucas, my ex-husband, said with a half laugh. "We can't carry you, Kalia. We've got enough on our plate." His words stung, a harsh reminder of the life I had left behind. A voice crackled over the speakerphone. "Judith, Lucas's mother, joining the ambush. Tell her this isn't a halfway house," she said, her voice laced with disdain. Ilara returned with my suitcase, packed and ready. "You've been gone for months," she said, avoiding my gaze. "We figured it was time to reset the space." I stood there, my voice barely a whisper, as I reminded them of the sacrifices I had made. The mortgage payments, the double shifts, the dreams I had given up to keep this family afloat. But it fell on deaf ears. Ilara shrugged, her words cutting deep. "You're not a charity case, Kalia. Everyone's struggling. You'll land on your feet." Later that evening, I found myself at a farewell dinner, surrounded by neighbors and extended family. The clinking of glasses and the laughter echoed around me, each sound a painful reminder of my isolation. Ilara raised her glass, her voice loud and clear. "Let's all raise a toast to Kalia. She's finally moving on, hopefully to something that doesn't involve dusting someone else's furniture." The room erupted in laughter, and I sat there, smiling and nodding, playing along as I always had. But inside, something broke. They had no idea what I carried in my purse that night, the secret that would change everything. I didn't cry as I walked out of the house, suitcase in hand. Instead, I booked the most expensive suite in downtown Austin, determined to gather myself before facing the truth. The suite was luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and the scent of lavender from the spa downstairs. But I wasn't there to indulge. I was there to prepare for the battle ahead. At 10:14 a.m., the concierge called to announce a visitor. I knew who it was before she even stepped into the room. Ilara, dressed as if she was headed to a board meeting, set a manila envelope on the marble coffee table. "You always like things neat," she said casually, as if this was just another business meeting. She slid a stack of papers toward me, a list of every expense she had ever covered for me, from diapers to college dorm setup. At the bottom, bold and underlined, was the total due. I blinked, unable to believe what I was seeing. Ilara took a sip of water, her voice cold and matter-of-fact. "Receipts, records, proof. I kept them because I knew someday you'd forget all I did for you." I started laughing, the sound bitter and hollow. "You raised me with a calculator in your back pocket," I said, my voice rising. "Unbelievable. You think love pays the bills, Ilara?" She snapped back, her voice rising. "Everything has a price, Kalia. And since you seem so independent all of a sudden, it's time you paid your share." She reached into her bag and pulled out a yellow sticky note with an attorney's name on it. "If you won't repay what you owe voluntarily, I'll see you in court." Before I could respond, Lucas's face appeared on Ilara's phone screen, a fake smile plastered on his face. "Hey, Kalia," he said, his voice dripping with insincerity. "Look, I know this is awkward, but Mom's right. You've lived rent-free most of your life. It's time to step up." Judith's voice cut in, her words cold and unyielding. "Frankly, Kalia, this isn't personal. It's just the reality of adulthood. We've carried you morally and financially long enough." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These people who had sat at my table and eaten from my hands were now uniting against me, determined to take me down. I ended the call without a word, my mind racing as I logged into the Trust private portal. I created a new request, initiating an internal audit of the Whitlow Family Trust. I wasn't doing it to flaunt what I had. I was doing it because they thought they could put a number on my life and file it under accounts receivable. They had no idea what was coming. I stood in the showroom of a luxury villa surrounded by scale models and expensive furnishings. Soraya, the sales agent, strutted across the marble floor, her voice dripping with disdain. "Let's not waste time," she said, waving at the model. "These units aren't for people who clean for a living." I gave her a polite smile and walked toward the balcony model, letting her keep talking. So many people walk in here thinking a fat tip makes them luxury class, she added under her breath to another agent nearby. Everyone laughed, but I didn't flinch. I turned to the senior sales manager and quietly asked him to confirm the credentials under Whitlow Holdings. He excused himself, returning 5 minutes later looking nervous. He leaned towards Soraya and said softly, "She's the client." "Not just a client, the buyer. She's purchasing both Model A and Model D." Soraya blinked, trying to laugh it off. I didn't realize she stammered. I cut her off. "I'll take both," I said calmly, "and I'd like her commission revoked. I'll pay full rate to someone else." Later that night, I sat in my suite, sipping peppermint tea as I scanned new interior design proposals. My email pinged with a message from Lucas, the subject line reading, "Who is Whitlow Holdings?" Attached was a real estate article about a new buyer shaking up the market with multi-million-dollar deals. He had finally connected the dots, realizing that Whitlow wasn't just any name, it was Victoria's name. He had even asked Elara about it earlier that day, according to the concierge who overheard their call. Elara's voice went from dismissive to panicked in under 10 seconds. They didn't know the half of it. I sat across from my attorney in a quiet conference room, the windows facing the downtown skyline. In front of us were two thick folders. One held documented proof of decades of mortgage contributions, property tax records, and every dollar I had poured into the house Elara now claimed as hers. The other was more recent shareholder documents showing that Whitlow Trust now held 51% of Halden and Partners, the financial consulting firm Lucas operated like his personal empire. Reed arrived at his office around 8:30 that morning, coffee in hand, ready to play boss. He didn't even make it to his office door. The receptionist, a new hire, stood up nervously. "Mr. Halden, I think you'll want to go straight to HR," she said, her voice trembling. Downstairs, Human Resources handed him a letter. Effective immediately, Mr. Reed Halden is terminated from his position as CEO by majority shareholder vote. Further access to company systems has been revoked. He stared at the paper, then at the signature. Not mine, but my attorney's. His face drained of color as he stormed out and called Elara from the parking lot. I had lunch that afternoon with my real estate attorney at a small bistro near Town Lake. As she enjoyed her salad, I reviewed the formal claim we were filing for the house I had been thrown out of just weeks before. It wasn't revenge, it was restoration. For 30 years, my name was nowhere on the deed, but the payments, my W's, my transfers, my repair records, all traceable, all time is stamped. And now Elara would need to explain to a judge why her name was on something she hadn't paid for in over a decade. 2 days later, I received notice that a preliminary ruling was in my favor. My name was reinstated as co-owner with immediate rights to valuation or full repossession pending final review. The judge had even written, based on documentation, the defendant has benefited from considerable financial contribution from the plaintiff without compensation. I sent Elara a single message: "Don't pack. I'm not kicking you out. But don't ever think this house is yours again." She didn't reply, and I didn't need her to, because justice doesn't always come with a gavel or a courtroom audience. Sometimes it comes quietly when the balance finally shifts back to where it belonged. I expected silence, but what I got was a smear campaign designed to ruin me completely. When I became a trending hashtag, I realized this wasn't just family drama anymore. It was war. My face was everywhere, cropped, filtered, demeaned. TikTok skits mocked me as the maid who couldn't her dying boss. Twitter threads accused me of manipulating a lonely old woman. But they underestimated how deep I had already been buried in my life and how hard I had fought to climb out. By noon, I was trending for all the wrong reasons. A Twitter thread titled "Rich Maid Steals Inheritance" had racked up over 40,000 retweets. TikTokers were acting out scenes of me crying crocodile tears, wearing fake Chanel, pretending to dust bookshelves with diamond rings on their fingers. My inbox exploded with messages: "Gold digging parasite, you make women look bad. Elder abuse isn't cute just because you're in designer heels. You're disgusting. You should be locked up." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain had crystallized into something sharper. I posted only one thing publicly: false accusations are defamatory. I won't respond with words. I'll respond with evidence. Then I opened Judah's contact and sent her a private message. "I know what you're doing. I know who you talk to. And I know how you think this ends. You're wrong. The next thing I publish won't be a gossip piece. It'll be proof. And it won't be anonymous." She didn't reply, but she read it. I saw the scene mark flash under my message. I hoped it made her stomach twist. They thought silence meant surrender. They were wrong. And if they really wanted to see what I looked like when I stopped playing nice, well, they were about to. I went live, the screen showing my face, no makeup, no filters, no smile. Hi, since so many of you are talking about me, I thought I'd talk to you directly. I held up folders one by one, my employment contract with Victoria, 22 years of service, every health bill I paid when she was too proud to file insurance, statements highlighted, photos of the house before I renovated, paid out of pocket. Then I read messages and texts from Ilara, calling me a walking ATM, and Lucas joking that I was the best free tenant ever. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Within minutes, the comments shifted. She was used. She didn't steal. She survived. Where's the apology? I ended the stream with one final file, a video clip, grainy but clear, dated 3 months before Victoria passed. She sat in her favorite chair, smiling at the camera. If you're seeing this, it means I'm gone. I want it known that Kalia is not just my employee. She is the daughter I chose. She cared for me without asking for anything. That's why everything I have belongs to her now. I let it play to the end, no cuts, no commentary. Then I closed the stream. It took hours for the shockwave to hit full speed. News outlets picked it up. Opinion columns flipped sides. TikTokers who mocked me deleted their videos or replaced them with teary apologies. And Judith, gone from social media, Reed, though he couldn't help himself. He streamed live from a dimly lit kitchen, eyes red, voice shaky. I didn't know she'd do all this. I didn't know she'd turn the world against us. The comments were merciless because you turned against her first. She gave you a home. You gave her shame. The next morning, I woke up to the kind of nightmare you can't shake off with coffee or a hot shower. My phone was buzzing nonstop. A friend from high school forwarded me the link. Disgrace Maid or Manipulative Heiress, the truth behind a viral inheritance scandal. It was plastered across a local lifestyle site, the kind that fed on gossip dressed up as journalism. There were no facts, just shadows twisted into a narrative. It claimed I had seduced Victoria in her final years, manipulating a vulnerable widow to rewrite her will. It even hinted that I'd been caught in intimate moments inside the estate, though no evidence was offered, just anonymous sources and cropped, unflattering photos of me taken years apart, mashed together for effect. I called the publisher directly. The receptionist transferred me to their editor. We were pitched the story by a reliable local academic, he said coolly. A Dr. Judith Halden. Of course, I didn't yell, I didn't plead. I simply said, thank you for confirming, and ended the call. They wanted to drag my name through the dirt, fine, but they underestimated how deep I'd already been buried in my life and how hard I had fought to climb out. By noon, I was trending for all the wrong reasons. A Twitter thread titled Rich Maid Steals Inheritance had racked up over 40,000 retweets. TikTokers were acting out scenes of me crying crocodile tears, wearing fake Chanel, pretending to dust bookshelves with diamond rings on their fingers. My inbox exploded with messages. Gold-digging parasite, you make women look bad. Elder abuse isn't cute just because you're in designer heels. You're disgusting. You should be locked up. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain had crystallized into something sharper. I posted only one thing publicly. False accusations are defamatory. I won't respond with words. I'll respond with evidence. Then I opened Judith's contact and sent her a private message. I know what you're doing. I know who you talk to. And I know how you think this ends. You're wrong. The next thing I publish won't be a gossip piece. It'll be proof, and it won't be anonymous. She didn't reply, but she read it. I saw the scene mark flash under my message. I hoped it made her stomach twist. They thought silence meant surrender. They were wrong. And if they really wanted to see what I looked like when I stopped playing nice, well, they were about to. The knock on my door wasn't loud. It was the kind that begged, not demanded. I opened it, expecting room service or maybe a neighbor. But there she was, Ilara, her shoulders slouched, her eyes swollen, her once flawless lipstick now a faint memory. I lost everything, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The house, Reed took off. Judith won't even answer me anymore. I didn't invite her in. I just stood there, hand on the doorknob, watching a woman I once called mother unravel and right laid me like loose thread from a worn-out sweater. She continued, her breath shaky. I know I was wrong. Kalia, I know I hurt you. Please, I just need a few weeks. There was no show, no sobbing, no crocodile tears, just exhaustion and maybe, for once, a sliver of truth. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I'm not your home anymore, I said softly. She looked up, searching for something in my face. So that's it, she asked. No, I said, pulling an envelope from my side table. Inside was a prepaid card and a printed list of senior housing centers with support programs. It's enough for 6 months. After that, it's on you. She took the envelope slowly, like it might burn her fingers. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. I didn't need them. You don't owe me thanks, I said. And I don't owe you anything more. I closed the door gently, not with force, not with spite. Just closure. Later that week, headlines changed again. Judith was under investigation for falsifying financial records tied to social media sponsorships. The blog that ran the fake story issued a quiet apology at 2 a.m., the kind meant to be missed. Reed lost his platform completely after violating content policies. His final stream, a 3-hour monologue about being misunderstood, with watched and quickly forgotten. And Elara, she didn't vanish, but she became small, like a shadow that no longer startled me in the dark. The Austin Tribune ran a piece titled Not a Maid, but a Martyr. I didn't read it. I didn't need someone else's words to explain mine. Instead, I spent the afternoon at my lake house, the wind off the water rustling the tall grass. A heron skimmed the shoreline. My name wasn't trending. My phone didn't ring. It was quiet, and in that silence, I wrote a letter, not to Elara or Judith or Reed, to myself. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I do. I folded the note, slipped it into a glass jar, and buried beneath the oak tree out back, right where the roots were strong. Some debts can't be repaid, but they can be released. I didn't need closure. I needed peace, and peace finally had a name. Mine. Most mornings, I wake up to birdsong and the smell of dark roast coffee. Nothing more, nothing less. My lake house is quiet. It used to be a trophy, something I thought I had to prove I was worthy of. Now, it's just home. A real one. No performance required. There are no lawyers in my calendar anymore, no interviews, no articles to defend myself against. Just a class of 6 students from the local elementary school who show up every Tuesday and Thursday for piano lessons. They call me Miss Kalia. That's all. Not the maid, not the fraud, not the scandal. Just me. Monica stops by sometimes. We became friends in the least expected way, her trying to sell me property, me buying 2 units on a whim. She brought over banana bread this morning. People still whisper about you. She said as she leaned on my kitchen counter, you're the woman who bought 2 villas in one afternoon and disappeared. I laughed and took a sip of coffee. Funny, right? And I still sleep in just one room. I don't post anymore. I haven't opened my social accounts in months. The world can keep shouting. I'm not listening. Let the world scream, I told Monica once. I have silence. She nodded like she understood. Truth is, peace isn't a loud arrival. It's not a headline or a standing ovation. It's making dinner without being interrupted. It's drinking coffee before it gets cold. It's listening to the wind instead of worry. Sometimes I think about them, not out of longing, just in passing. Judith is under federal review, now tax evasion, sponsored content fraud, something about falsifying donation receipts. Reed's business license was revoked after a whistleblower exposed years of shady contracts. He can't legally operate a company until he's almost 50. And Elara, she's still alive. That's all I know. I received a postcard last month. No return address. The handwriting looked familiar. I hope you're well. I'm sorry, that was it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth is, forgiveness doesn't need a reply. That same afternoon, I taught Ellie, my youngest student, a few bars of Moonlight Sonata. She stopped and asked, why do you like this song so much? I smiled and rested my fingers gently on the keys. Because it starts sad, I said, but it doesn't stay that way. She nodded like it made perfect sense. Kids get it more than adults sometimes. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves outside. I paused, closed the lid over the keys, and just listened. No chaos, no threats, no crisis, just the sound of a life, mine still going, still whole, still here. They took everything from me except the one thing they never understood I had, the will to begin again. Before you go, let me say this. Life doesn't always break you with thunder. Sometimes it chips away at you little by little through the people who were supposed to love you most. I spent years mistaking silence for peace, loyalty for love, and survival for living. But here's what I learned. Boundaries are not betrayals. Walking away doesn't make you the villain. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose yourself. If my story sounded familiar, if it echoed something in your own life, I hope it reminded you that you are allowed to start over. You don't need permission to rebuild. You don't need applause to be free. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love just to protect your peace? Or maybe you're still trying to decide if it's time. Let me know in the comments. Just drop a one if this story touched your heart, or tell me why it didn't connect with you. That's okay too. Tell me why. I'm here to listen. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories about healing, about truth, about power in the quietest places, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because your story matters too, and you're not alone anymore.